Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, guys. Today we're going to discuss the strong correlation between wealth increase, prosperity, or strong economy. The strong correlation between this and agnosticism or atheism, or even much more related, irreligiosity. Okay, so what I'm saying is that historically, or when we study history of the past, or even contemporarily, you will see that whenever there's a boost or there's a strong economy or people are much more prosperous and wealthy, they tend to be much more irreligious. And this can go down very the south. It can go to like atheism even, or even agnosticism, or even just taking things very what's it called, not very strong. Okay, so it leads to religiosity. So this is what one trend I've noticed. So you will see like in all these Western countries, they used to be very what's it called, religious and stuff. But that was in the days when they were not really that wealthy. And but soon as it turned and they became much more wealthy and prosperous, you see like now the default is atheism and agnosticism. Or even if you're religious, it will be a very toned down kind of religion. Now, you might be surprised, like this is actually happening to them, but it's actually happening to us also. There were some things that were unheard of in the Islamic world in the past, but because of the general global development, as I would say, because everyone is becoming much more independent and wealthy, relatively, okay. So in some Muslim countries now, you see women on TikTok, on social media stuff. It was unheard of before, and people are much more are less angry with this kind of things. So if someone sees this, a woman on TikTok, will not be so angry, be like, whatever, because of the we are becoming much more independent, and we see ourselves as do we really need God? That's what usually happens. So for example, the African religions, one of the downfall of the African religions that I think is that they were too much focused on the dunya, on the world. What do I mean by that? They promised that, you see, these gods, they are going to give us wealth. These gods will give us rain. These gods will do this, will do that, only if we give them something. So you give the gods something, they give you rain. You give them something, they give you money. You give them something, they give you long life. But now when we have doctors, and we don't need to give the gods anything, we still have long lives. We don't need to give gods anything. I'm rich, I'm wealthy. You don't need to give the gods anything. You have rain. So people start to see like, we don't really need these gods. And I would say one of the good thing about the Islamic and even, let's say, Judeo-Christian God is that it's not necessarily about this life. Even though some Christians in Africa, they make it focus too much on this life. And if you don't get it, and it doesn't make sense. If you focus too much on this life and you don't get it, or you get it through another means, that means you don't really need God in the first place. But thank God that our own religion is not focused on this life mainly. So you can be a kafir and be wealthy. It doesn't matter. That's what it says in the Quran anyway. That this life is not the main goal. You can be rich, you can be poor, it doesn't matter. It's all a test. But the point I want to show is that if in the future you start to see like Islamic countries that are not so well developed nowadays, the more they get wealth, the more they become much more prosperous. You will see like irreligiosity will drop. Irreligiosity will drop, and the more education people have, they'll become much more open-minded. And then you start to see like people don't take religion seriously. They will start to change some laws. This is what's going to happen. See, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm just telling you. If you look at the West, those church figures, they tried to stop this, but they couldn't. It's not possible. You can't stop it with force. I think you just have to, you're just going to adapt to it. See, it's not necessarily a bad thing to per se, unless you think in a very fundamental sense of religion. But it's not necessarily a bad thing if you can culture it towards a much more philosophical way of thinking about religion. If you don't, and you want to make it rigid, people are going to leave it. But if you make it much more intellectual kind of way, and that's the way it always goes, it will become much more intellectual. And so I think if you even Muslim countries, the moment they start becoming prosperous, these things will happen. It's what has happened in history, and you can just see it. It's like written in the law of history. Anyway, the point is that I just wanted to give you this perspective, and let me see what you guys think. Do you think this is true? Do you have another view of why this always happens? With I think once people become, they see themselves as much more independent of God in a way, because they think God is the one that is supposed to give this thing and I can have it in another way. So they see themselves as their own gods, literally. So the point so what do you guys think about this? I've been thinking about this, and I see this, and Some people are laughing at the West right now. They're laughing at them that, look at you, you guys are atheists, and people are leaving Christianity and stuff. People are not leaving Christianity to become Muslims. No, people are leaving Christianity to become agnostics, to become atheists. I just need to point out to some Muslim brothers, and it can happen to Islam too. The Islamic countries, it can happen to you. When people start leaving Islam because of prosperity, it wouldn't be to Christianity or something. It would just be to agnosticism, atheism, or even taking religion very lightly. That's what usually happens. I think in our Muslim golden age, what happened was we had it was towards much more intellectual, philosophical way. They started thinking like that. They started becoming universalist, like thinking that everyone will be saved as long as you're good and stuff like that. You see, like, this is how it always goes. So I just found out like this is actually very interesting. And the opposite is the case. Whenever you have bad economy and people are poor and they are much more needy of God and everything like this, they will become very religious and very fundamental, and we have to obey God's laws. It's because we are not obeying these laws, that's why we have problem. You see, like, this is what is usually the case. So I just wanted to point that to you. Let me see what you guys think. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.